Conversations with Kinfolk. I'll be your host today. This Gary. You may hear me referred to as G or Johnny Ray or whatever else come out of my brother's mouth. Here with my boy Mike B, old Brownie, Winthorpe, as they call him when he got the suit on, and my boy C.
Though?
C the Doe, Willie Ray, Johnny Ray, Billy Ray, whatever Ray we want to put him as that day. What's up, C?
We all
What's
kinfolk.
up, man? We kinfolk.
It's all
And I do
kinfolk.
play cards with JD Shellnut sometime.
Well, we not touching you then, man. He's the chief of police, in case people didn't catch that one. Well, today we're going to kick it off with a verse. I know we're coming up on Father's Day this weekend. I know that's the day that all men are looking for and just can't wait. And I'm sure the wives can't wait to show love on Father's Day. No pun intended. And as we talk about the dads, not the guy like seated with that 300 driver down there with them dads. I'm talking about the everyday regular dad, like me and old Brownie over here.
Yeah, man.
But our verse from the day is coming from Ephesians 6. Hold on, I lost my place here. All right, fathers, do not provoke your children to anger by the way you treat them. Rather, bring them up with the discipline and instruction that comes from the Lord. So what I take from this, as a father, I grew up with raised by my mother as a single mother and didn't have a father to get some of these lessons, but my mother did a great job of wearing both hats. And now that I am a father with three kids, a girl dad and a boy dad, so to speak, the lesson that this verse speaks to me is, men as fathers, we're responsible for bringing up our children. And a lot of times, as you look at, as the verse says, don't provoke them or anger them. I think one of the things that fathers, and this is what I assumed before I became a father, it's about discipline. A lot of times discipline is confused with punishment. I think they both can do have the same purpose, but there are two different ways of doing it. Punishment, go to your room because you didn't clean. Go to your room. Don't turn on your iPad because you didn't wash the dishes. A kid can go there. If they hear that over and over and over, it's all about what they don't do. Go do this. That's punishment. And that can lead to anger from the kid. Even though they can't speak back and say, forget you, when they get 13, become teenagers, you start to see that rebellion, I believe, versus discipline. Discipline, you didn't wash the dishes. Come here, son. If you don't wash the dishes, we're going to have maggots and gnats and stuff in our kitchen. The house going to stink. This is the result of that if you don't wash our dishes every single night. Now go to your room and don't touch your iPad. I think both served a purpose as far as teaching the kid what they did wrong. One, the kid is stumbling to his room angry, mad, why I have to wash the dishes all the time. The other, the discipline, is, oh man, I kind of feel bad. I left that milk in there spoiled. Now the kitchen's stinking. I think kids continue to grow, it's going to give them a totally different perspective and outlook of the way they would approach, because now they know why washing dishes was important to mom and dad versus go do it because I said so. That's how we were raised. Go in there because I said so. It was never an explanation of why or what this could lead to. It was always just because I'm mom and I said so. You do what I say. And I think that could lead to rebellion as kids get older, because once you start smelling yourself, man, I don't have to do anything. And I think with this generation, that's what we see in public. Kids are cuss in front of you, cut in front of you, whether it's in a car, in line, and it's no respect for authority. Because I've been told all my life, I've been waiting to get grown so I can say what I want to say to people. So that's kind of the backdrop that I have and what I took from this verse. Definitely want to chime in, bring the brothers in on the convo. What y'all got, man?
Yeah, man. That's strong, Johnny Ray, man. I think that's for me and C kind of was having some conversation before we hit the record button. And I'm still working on it, man. Not to provoke your children to anger. I mean, this just being having some raw conversation, right? You don't ever want to operate in anger, and it's always operating in love. But we talked about this generation and how sometimes they could take things for granted. They all have more resources than we do have. They are in the suburbs, they're suburb kids, but it's like anything else, right? It's always this affinity for what you don't have. Me growing up, you as well, not having a dad, as a child, you always thought about what it would be like to have that dad, right? And conversely, my son has a dad in the house, and oftentimes what I get is, man, go ahead on. That's the old school way. You don't know what you're talking about. But I'm persistent in my role as a dad, And as we are, heading into Father's Day weekend, man, I think it's a critical role that we serve, obviously. And my son could tell me that he's not listening, but subconsciously he's soaking it all up because I'm seeing the manifestation. I'm seeing the hard work. I'm seeing the progress that my wife and I have just been pouring in him from day one. And, more importantly, whether his grades are where they need to be or whether my daughter's grades are where they need to be, whether they listening to music I don't necessarily appreciate or approve of, I tap in so I can know what they're listening to so I can balance that, right? The most important thing that I could do, the most important things that we can do as kids, the most important thing that our listeners can do is take your kids to church, right? So they can have something that balance off whatever the world is going to share with them, man. Because the world is going to take you down through there and not necessarily tell you how to balance it out when you feeling depressed, when you feeling anxiety. We heard something at church yesterday and it was talking about your mind can't think two thoughts at once. So if Satan is filling your mind with negative thoughts that you can't do this or you're not good enough to do this or you don't deserve that, then there's no room to think about the things that Christ said about you. You are qualified. You are more than a conqueror. You've already paid for whatever sickness that you're dealing with or rebellion with this child. It's just seeing that process through. And man, we can go a lot of different ways, but I love to kind of hear C's perspective, but you landed on discipline. And for me, that's what it's about. And we have a lot of different scenarios, right? So discipline for me is having the wherewithal to do something even when you don't feel like it. We all ex-athletes. There were days we didn't feel like working out, but we did it because we knew what we were trying to get to. So that was the discipline that made you do that. As I'm talking about grades, the kids don't necessarily see the value in that because everything they look at nowadays, there's nothing re-emphasizing the importance of education. It's like, why I got to do that? School ain't a vibe, boy, it's boring, or I ain't doing this. But it's building good habits. It's the discipline of doing it anyway because you're not going to always feel like it. We as brothers, you may not always feel like doing right on the work side or in a relationship, whatever the case may be, but the discipline, because you are mature enough to understand that, you know what, I'm strong enough and I have enough discipline and I've done this enough to know that if I do X, Y, and Z, that's not going to be a good result or that ain't going to end well. I may tear something down that I got to go through and rebuild. So the discipline keeps me locked in. And just the second half of that verse, man, it talks about the instructions that come from the Lord. And I think that's still having this eternal perspective, embracing it in love. And if you operate in love, regardless of how you provide for your kid and they going against the grain or, you doing everything for them, but they respond in anger, the flesh want to rev up with that too. And I think you mentioned in your comments, Reed, we were told do something because I said so. Well, that don't necessarily apply nowadays. You know what I'm saying? And it's cool to talk through and give them a why behind it. But you can't challenge me when I'm providing everything for you. And so just getting back to that discipline, man, but also just kind of responding in love, it's a work in progress for me. Every day is different, man. And 3 days out the week, I might get it right. But if I'm buying you lunch, dinner, and I'm asking you to do certain things, and I'm putting gas in your car, and I'm paying the insurance on it, and I ask you to do something, and you blow up and ask me why, that's a problem, and it had to be dealt with, and so I'm still working on this, is what I'm saying, Ken. So see the dough, man. I know me and Reed kind of jumped that thing off, and we can go a lot of different ways, but love to hear your perspective on this verse, Kinfolk.
Man, this is a good topic, man. Just on a timely manner. We all have different stages that we're in when it comes to parenting. And I think those comments you guys just made were very spot on. I took a step back when I got the verse and went to the prior chapter. So in Ephesians 5:21, it starts this whole category by saying spirit-guided relationships. Then it goes into wives submit to your husbands and husbands respect your wife. Then it goes into children obey your parents. And then it goes to slaves obey your master. So it gave a chronological order of how things happen in life. You get married first. So you start as a child having to obey your family, your parents, so that things can go well for you. Paul said this was the first commandment that came with a promise. So as a part of discipline, it's not just telling you what the negative results are. A part of the discipline is also identifying the reward and the reason why you do these things, right? And so sometimes I know in my growing up, it was overemphasized on the consequences, right, of not doing it versus What is the reward? Even when it came to salvation, I was scared into it more so on the consequences early on in childhood. And now later on in life, when I actually reconnected, it was about the reward. It was about, hey, this is what I have for you, right? So as parents, as fathers, it's not just our job to tell them what will happen if they don't. We have to show them what will happen if they do as well. That's that balancing act, right? So I just thought the categorization of how these things happen in the scripture were very prevalent to show us, where is our ministry at? Where is our real work at? What is the priority that God has put in our life as to how we develop as men, as husbands, as fathers, and then out there in the field as workers or owners? Either way, every group responded in this or referred to in this message has their own responsibilities. Children, it's your job to obey. Parents, it's your job to instruct with the instruction and discipline that comes from the Lord, not what comes from society or culture or these books and these things that we all are plugged into now that are telling us how to do this job. It said specifically the discipline and the instruction that comes from the Lord. We've read multiple chapters and verses where God was disciplining his children. We've also read in those same scriptures where he gave them an out and gave them the reward. Hey, this is what happens if you do right by me. So that is the model that he's given us to take with our kids. And just like with the children of Israel and any other child, they're going to find themselves having to make a choice of, do I follow the crowd? Do I go with my flesh? Do I try to connect with what culture and society is telling me is the cool thing to do? Which is ultimately, most times, in direct competition with what we've told them to do as parents.
Yep.
Not knowing that we've already been there and done that. That's what I tell my buddies all the time. Like, man, ain't no way. Like, we've already been there and done that, man. I've done way more than y'all could even do right now. And as your dad, my job is to keep you from falling into a pit. My job is to keep you aligned with the mission, to keep you growing and moving forward and not do things that will ultimately put a detriment to how you move forward. That's what it's about. So, man, I just think as we roll into Father's Day, and we were talking about this whole topic, like the whole context of it is all of the places where Satan will generally try to attack us in our marriage, right? With our kids, and then on the job. And it's telling us to operate as if we're operating because we belong to Christ, not because of who's in front of us, whether it's our wife, our child, or our employer, or you being that employer. We have to operate with integrity and that love and that discipline because that's what Christ does require us to do as his slaves, as his servants. So that's the mode of operation we have to take on regardless of who's in front of us, man. So that's what I really found a lot of value in, man, just really kind of walking through and seeing the different narratives around the relationships that we have in our life and the importance of our role, not just being in charge, but being responsible to set the order, being responsible to set the tone, being responsible to provide instruction and discipline. And we can't grow weary in doing that good work is my final comment. Because we've all talked about it, man. We know the cost that it takes on. We know how much it costs us. And sometimes it's easier just to be quiet and let it happen, right? Man, y'all go on about your business, man. I'm out. But he said, don't grow weary in doing that good work, man. That's because everybody's going to be rewarded by the good work that you do. That's what it says in the verse, man. So I'm encouraging all the people that are responsible for doing things, fathers specifically, since we focused in on that right now, don't grow weary of doing that good work. Even if they're not patting you on the back and telling you they love you and it's a good job and appreciating and responding in respect and all that kind of stuff, hey, demand what it requires. I'm not saying that. But if you're not getting a response from man and you know that you're doing the work according to this scripture, just know that your Father in heaven keeps real good books, man. And your reward is based on that. So I just want to encourage all of my fellows, specifically the ones I'm looking at now, my brothers and my kinfolk. Hey, man, we talk about it a lot. We chop it up a lot about just the trials of this modern era. And even back then, there were obviously forces that pulled on the child, that pull on the wife, that pull on an employer to make them act up. And he said, that's not them. That's those principalities in high places, those evil forces that are influencing them. This was before social media, y'all. This was for TV and radio and everything else. So if these influences have always had an impact, think about how much more they have an impact now with this access they have. So our job is tougher now. Let's not be fooled by that.
Yep.
But we have what's in us that's overcome the world, even this world that we're in now. So we got the victory, fellas. Let's keep it moving. I salute y'all. Keep doing that work, fellas.
You said two big things that stood out, man. One was reward. And so many times we don't focus on the reward. All we see is consequences. Hey, I ain't taking her out. You know how much money I got to pay? You know how much time that is? Nah. But the other side is the reward. Most of the times in that scenario, in dating, you're looking at the reward and not even worried about the consequences. So I think depending on what the prize is, we focus on either reward or consequences. Make our age, yeah, it sound good, but that mean I got to study every night? No, I'm cool on that. You got to know that consequence. So I think taking a step back and looking at sometimes the reward of what we're trying to accomplish versus the consequence or failure if we don't do something is maturity. It's being mature. And the other thing from an instruction standpoint, if I was going to teach my son how to cook, I need to be read the cookbook to be able to show him how to cook some cornbread. So us as fathers, you hit it spot on. We got to understand the instruction from the word, and it's right there in the book of understanding in the word what our instructions are as men, as fathers, to be able to pass that down to our kids. So I think a lot of times it's based on what we were told growing up, or the way our parents did it, or the way somebody else, like you say, society did it, or what they say, versus reading the instruction in the book. You read Ephesians 5. Well, just reading through the word, God is going to tell us how to act, what we're supposed to do, or give us that instruction to be able to be a disciplinarian for our kids, or being that father figure to keep our kids from making some of the pitfalls that we saw or we had.
Yeah.
So those are two things that you were speaking and I thought about. Was one was that reward. The other one, we got to, as fathers, got to understand the instruction first to be able to pass it down to our kids, because they're not going to get it. All they hearing is us scream and fuss, as you alluded to, Mike. They push back on everything.
They do, man. I think it's important to also keep in perspective that we said this a couple shows back, and it was like, when you were a child, you act and thought like a child. And so as a child, oftentimes it's a selfish mindset because it's about me. It's a me mentality. And as you grow and as you mature, you understand that it's not so much about when you're a leader, it's about, okay, I'm going to make it to the mountaintop, not so I can look down on everybody, but I'm going to make it to the mountaintop so I can look down and see who needs help. And so as a father, I think, and as a leader, it gives you this eternal perspective, but also allows you to focus on things that are unseen. Because when we look at things that are seen, it's temporary, right? And so that goes back to the discipline, because you know that if I help my son, my daughter build good habits, that's going to carry them forward in life, right? And the instructions that come from the Lord are sustainable. And that's what this verse is talking about. Not what they get from TikTok or not what they get from social media. Funny story. This is intended for humor. Like my son, the things that I've been telling him for the last 18 years, and he just turned 18. So he's been able to comprehend, let's say, for the last 16, 17 years. It kind of goes in one ear and out the other, but subconsciously he listening. But that Joe will go to TikTok and look at the day and get all his information, man. I went up in his room the other day and he had like a little bowl, plastic bowl with some pine sol and some water in there, pine sol and some water in. I'm like, what's this for? I'm trying to catch a gnat. Where you get that from? TikTok. So it's just little things like that. But had I told him, he wouldn't have did it.
He wouldn't do
right?
it.
And it's all good. So again, just getting him to understand that the instructions that come from the Lord are sustainable. Not this ride the wave, fly by night stuff that you see on social media, and trying to get him to have that balance, right? And the last thing I add, man, is discipline that we focused on, that we talk about in this verse. The benefit of that's eternal is it involves self-control. That allows you to sometimes push back and resist on those desires that you may have, right? And that's the discipline aspect of that we're talking about, because you ain't gonna always feel like doing what's right. Whether that's school related, whether that's working out if you're an athlete, whether you own the job and then you do your best to get the job. Then when you get the job, you figure out how you can do shortcuts. You know what I'm saying? To get paid the same amount of money, but do the least amount of work.
Coming home,
you know what I'm saying?
Coming home versus making a pit stop at the Dust Bowl.
Whatever the case may be, in relationships. So it's okay, it's her birthday or it's his birthday or it's this special occasion. Like, man, we've been married for 20 years. I don't really want to do that right now. But again, the discipline of just going back to everything we talk about, what the show is founded in, man, just always operating in love and keeping that as the main thing. The main thing, that's love.
One last point, because that's all relevant. One thing we have to understand is that they watching us. They ain't just looking at our lips move. They looking at our hips and feet, bro. Like, for real. And so when they see us implement that discipline, that wisdom, that instruction to our actions, that's why I said don't prompt them by the way you treat them. They're going to respond on how you treat them. And they'll respect the law, even if they don't like it. If we're consistent and connected to the things that are benefits and the things that are restrictions, they'll at least respect that. And so what they're doing now, I know what I was telling B about my youngest son, like he over processing coolness. He see that in his pops. He see that in his grandfolks. Like everybody around him super cool. And so he's put his own spin and interpretation of what that means and how he's supposed to act based on what he thinks he's seeing. He's processing as a child, to that point about thinking like the child. There are certain parts of that he don't even know is happening, right?
Right.
And so, again, we have to understand all of that in process. It's not just about us understanding. It's not just about us taking them to church. It's not just about what we saying. They are paying more attention to what we doing. And my mom said that early on because she knew it, and she was kind of telling, like, hey, Corey, you got to watch what you're doing in front of your boys now. On that, Lecrae, hey, my son's paying attention. Every move is clutch. He ain't just listening. He watching. Can't be doing too much, right? We have to understand that. And whatever we do, we need to be ready to ration it out for them. Hey, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. This is communication, right? So anyway, good nugget, man. Good word, Johnny Ray. Good word, B. Let's go, bro. I thought that was helpful, man.
Yeah.
And actually, man, I know we had a couple of topics like we normally do to throw out, but as we were talking, just had an idea, man. I know it was Father's Day, and that come around once a year. It's the most under-advertised holiday, I think, in the history of holidays. I haven't seen the first Father's Day commercial with a gold watch or a chain or something. I just got a question to throw out, man, and this is to add some humor to the show as well, of a Father's Day gift. I was joking with the dad over the weekend at a baseball game about Father's Day, and we just had to joke like, yeah, okay, expect that golf shirt or that attachment that you put on your belt clip with golf balls on it that you probably not going to wear. Just some of the gifts that we get over the holiday. Man, what would y'all say if you had to pick and tell your wife what to choose you for Father's Day? What would your ideal gift be for Father's Day?
Oh, I'll go first, Ken. Jump out the birthday cake. I can buy anything. I can buy my own golf stuff and underwear and socks or whatever. Well, I need you to jump out that birthday cake for your boy.
Hey, look, there's a rule, Ken. You got 24 hours to have your way, man. So make your request known. And, man, I'm going to salute the lady, man. Father's Day normally go real hard for me, above any other holiday, man. So she normally do a really good job of looking out on me. But, man, if I had, and I love to travel, man. I could envision she and I being on the island somewhere. And we pull up at the airport, man, and we go somewhere. I don't care what it would be, but just having that alone adult time. And we fly the birthday cake over there too. And then you hop up out that thing like Ken say, man, that birthday cake. So it's all been good, man. My Father's Day, and I don't know if y'all would agree. I did see a commercial last week, and I was with her. It may have been yesterday. And there was a Home Depot commercial say, dads get the same thing every year, right? Them tools,
Do it yourself.
Do it just, lady, no, I ain't got nothing on no tools, man. So don't bring nothing in here, man. And she go hard for me on Father's Day, bro. I know there's always some humor associated with it because to your point, though, even at church, I think we make this, it's always a big event for Mother's Day, rightfully so. But it seems like fathers, man, in that role that it don't never necessarily get the same delight. And I don't know that they should, but as fathers, as we just sitting there talking through it, man, we do so much. And I think sometimes we suffer in silence because as a youngster, you're taught that we can't be emotional. We're taught to hold things in or we can handle things. And that's what's so tight about our brotherhood and so tight about the show. It's because we need to normalize. And man, when you're not all right, it's okay to say that, but also have somebody you could talk to, such as your brothers, right? Because what you don't want happening is going back to the verse. Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger by the way you treat them. But if you had something that happened on the job or you got something going on with the old lady, man, and this may be the straw that breaks the camel's back, and you have misplaced anger. You don't necessarily mean to be going at the kid, right? It's something else that got you worked up, but you ain't had the time to separate from what happened at work between now you got to switch roles and be into this parent. So that's a little bit more than what you asked for. But man, if I had
that's
my
what I
wish,
wanted.
man,
That's what I wanted, B. That's
Well, you know,
Speaking
even
of
to that point, man, I think what we have consumed from a Father's Day standpoint is a very commercialized, man-made holiday. Like, we're not even looking at it from the standpoint of how our experience goes scripturally. So when you talk about commercialized things, they gonna always cater to who's gonna spend the money, right?
facts,
So that's
facts.
why Mother's Day is all juicy, right?
Yeah.
That's why I don't know about, you know, even in church, man, churches are
That's
full
strong,
of
too.
women. So when it comes to Mother's Day, they got a whole lot more juice on it than Father's Day. They be like, all right, Father, stand up,
Yeah.
sit down. Y'all
Yeah.
done, right?
Yes.
And that's it.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and so
Yeah.
again, we can't get caught up in that. I think where we do fall short, sometimes it is disappointing, is when your expectation of appreciation is not met, right? Because it is a grind all year long. It is you having to do those things and point out the details and follow through on things that, quite frankly, get old. You get tired of hearing yourself fuss. I do. Like, man, I don't want to do this. But
Today.
not today. And then going even further into it for me, you know, my experience is that I've had my dad in my life the whole time. He's been my hero since I came out. He is still my hero. He is somebody I utterly look up to, right? And so trying to balance off, and now I have my wife's father in our life, who is a great dude, who has been a great mentor and a great relationship for me, right? So it's about balancing all of these figures in one day and being appreciated across the board, and also showing that appreciation to who you looking up for. So it's like one hand you looking to receive, and in the other hand you looking to give, and it's just a lot going on with it, right? So it's about really knowing who you are and why we do what we do. That's the only thing that keeps us sane throughout this whole process, right? Because there are challenges, man. As great as the lady is for me, and I get all kind of stuff and gifts, there are still moments of frustration where we miss it, right? And so really having that balanced approach to know that, hey, we are one. Going back to the script. And I'm going to love you because you are a part of me. And so you need to understand you celebrate me as you celebrating you too. Just like with Mother's Day, right? And so it's a very nuanced thing, but I think here in our culture, in the commercialized version of what we see when it comes to, and let's not forget the narrative that was created specifically for our group, the black man in the home, or the black man not needed in the home, which is the narrative, right? So all these things have empowered our women, our community, our culture, our society to say, hey, we can do without that. He really ain't that deep. We got all these people walking around with no fathers, so they doing good. He really ain't that critical to this thing. So it's a whole collective approach to excluding who's supposed to be the pillar of this thing. So when you don't have that solid foundation, things can happen, right? So again, look, I salute every woman, mother, etc., that has to navigate that by themselves, because I can't imagine the two hats that you have to wear with that. I can't even imagine a mom having to be mom, dad, provider, protector, cheerleader, coach, all that at the same time. That's a lot. I respect that thoroughly, man. So again, as we highlight and celebrate fatherhood, let us not, to your point, Johnny Ray and B, fall into the trap of minimizing what it means or going with the narrative of what's created about specifically black men and devaluing our presence in things, to saying, hey, man, we salute all fathers. We salute all dads, women, wives, moms. We appreciate all y'all do. Without y'all, it's no us, right? But it is worth celebrating. Go ahead, Johnny Ray, Ken.
Now, Reed, let's bust this open real quick, man, because I think C's perspective has so much value and grit to it, right? Because his dad being his hero and always being around. That's not what we had. I mean, you at least knew who your daddy was, and I think I didn't have a relationship with mine just like you did, and there was never nothing there. And my son, again, talking about how they listen subconsciously. I could talk all day about what he doesn't do, but I think it's a natural human emotion to always remember the negative experiences more than you do the positive, right? And so I could talk about how he and I went round and round, but I also could salute him and talk about the progression. And as he's getting ready to leave the crib, and we talk about him a lot on the show, and I'm proud of him. He asked me last week, man, we went to ball for his birthday, had a great meal. He like, man, how you know what to do if you ain't never had no dad?
Hmm.
You know, it was thought
Oh
provoking,
man.
right?
Yeah.
But not only that, no, I ain't had no dad in my life. My granddaddy passed before he was born. You know, there's very little engagement between he and my wife's dad, right? They've now built this beautiful relationship, and it's amazing to see her blossom because everybody needs that role in their life. And we all know when you have a female that don't have a dad, they tend to spend the rest of their life searching for what they were missing in their dad through different men, right? So with her, that wasn't her case, but I could just still see how much more complete she is because of the relationship she now has with him as an adult. But there's very little engagement with he and my kids. You know, he'll send stuff for birthdays and, you know, and try to say I'm there, but, you know, he's 18 now. And so again, not having, you know, my dad around and not having a really grandfather on his side, just what's so spiritual about the relationship you have with your father in heaven. Because that's where the instruction comes from. That's where the discipline comes from. You know, before I was formed in the womb, he had a purpose and call for my life. And me not having a natural father, it ain't make me mean, it gave me meaning, right? I ain't use it as a crutch, right? I use it as motivation. And I ain't never been the kid that sat at home and say, man, my dad ain't here. What would I be like if he was here? It always gave me this distinction of, now I am who I am because I didn't have him in my life, right? Who knows what I would have been like had he chose to participate. And it gets slippery and the situations get weird when you go back in the 60s and 70s about what happened with, you know, black men and really social conditioning about what they were used for as machines in the slavery period, right? To be able to just produce babies and keep them moving, right? So there was this trauma that was associated with generation from generation where the black man wasn't in the home. And so, man, just coming full circle, be able to appreciate my brothers, be able to bounce things off of y'all, man. But more importantly, I think not having that natural order in the house of what is direct, what's the word I'm trying to use? Understanding illustration of what it's like to be a leader, but being able to spiritually connect with God and be able to get everything that normally someone would think they would get naturally has still been provided, man. And I ain't missed nothing, man. And I'm thankful for my brothers. I'm thankful for the coaches, my uncles, and everybody that was involved that had anything to do with me being raised. You know, I salute that, man, because right now, boy, man, God has blessed us tremendously, and it's all good, man.
And that's dope, man. And everything both of you said. Shout out Mr. Green, yo, Pops Green over there, man.
No doubt,
Awesome,
he's
man.
solid.
Awesome, man. Always treated me like a son. When I was in Birmingham, spent a lot of time at the Green household, and
Yeah.
I feel like a green kid, so to speak.
Yeah.
So I know that's us by us three. I know, see, you did have your father, and not just a father, because there's a lot of people with a man in the house that ain't a father. That's not showing them what to be. That's not giving them discipline. That's actually showing them the opposite. The way they talk to their wife or their mother, the way they treat the kids, do as I say so, or abusive, whether verbally or physically. So just because a man is there don't mean he's showing you how to be a man and that he's being a good father. So you hit it on the head, Mike, as far as having meaning. I know for me, that was my motivation. It was I don't hold any regret. There's no ill intent, but it pushed me like, I can't wait to have a son. I can't wait to have a daughter so that I can show them not what I was missing, but how to walk this thing out. We know we can't tell them all the steps and we can't get in front of any challenges that they may foresee, but we can tell them it's a pothole up there at exit 10. You may want to take another route or you may want to go around that. And all the stuff that we do every day, as you say, see, our hips and feet, our movement. If they see us moving like that, then they going to trust and believe, oh, Dad, no, he know what he talking about driving that car. Probably ain't going to go that way. Versus we just telling them to do something, but then we doing the total opposite. So I think I'm thankful for the day for fathers. Like you said, Mike, I'm appreciative of my brothers. I know a lot of people don't have someone they can bounce things off to, go to when they're frustrated, or have some people that'll put them in place when they're wrong. And that's what I know I appreciate about our brotherhood is if one of us wrong, the other one gonna say you. Not gonna just agree with it. Like, no, maybe you want to look at it going another way and try to really open your mind and look at things from a holistic view versus just our view based on how we grew up or how we were conditioned.
Hey, real quick, man. Like, I appreciate that. And one of the parts of the verse was like, don't provoke them to anger by how you treat them as a father. And I know growing up, man, my dad was a magnet. Like all the little kids in the neighborhood wanted to hang and be around our dad. And we got to thumping a few times. Like, hey, man, that's my daddy. You know what I'm saying? Like, I got jet. Like, no, man, that's our daddy. You know, like for real. And really that protection of my dad always seemed to have this openness, but he also referred back to make sure that we knew that he didn't do anything for anyone else that he doesn't do for his own kids.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that people miss all the time, trying to be superheroes for everybody else. And those folks that are really looking at you and depending on you and needing you to be that for them, you don't have nothing to give them. So that's one of the parts we got to be real careful as we get pulled into different directions and things that people see your talent, your character, your grit, your results, and they want you to be a part of everything they got going on. But we have to remain focused on where our true ministry and priorities start. And that was something that, again, was very prevalent for me. Like, we would, hey, that's my daddy, man. And he kept it G with us, right? He kept it G with us, man. And that's something I'm very intentional with my sons are, no matter who else come around, I have to show my buddies that y'all are my priority. Like, y'all the top group for me, period. I don't care who else around here. Y'all are my dudes. Y'all are my little dudes, and I got y'all, right? So I just thought that was worth bringing out because sometimes we don't know that the things that we're doing for others cause jealousy in those that we're supposed to be doing that thing for.
See, you see it in blended families. I've had a scenario with a family member where relative gets married later on in life, and all the things that we talking about, this individual has now evolved, and they understand the significance and the importance of being a leader and a father. So the stepchildren get the benefit from that maturation. But the natural kids that he had early in the relationship, you know, he was still growing and still struggling with some things. And so they didn't have that connection. And all of a sudden the natural kids, you know, that he was the father of, you know, get jealous and have some resentment because they're like, okay, well, where were you when I needed you at that age, right? Actually, I'm just going to be completely transparent. I got one of my cousins who have made some decisions in terms of sexual orientation, right, as he's gotten older, but then pointed back to his childhood and say, well, I'm this way because my uncle, his dad wasn't involved in his life early on. I'm like, man, that's a stretch, bro. But I get you got this victim mindset. You know what I'm saying? He maybe not been a good father to you, but he ain't no bad person. And you can't lay that at his feet because you feel like he wasn't around or whatever you fell into or got exposed to. Let's call it what it is, and let's identify that as an evil spirit, whatever you got on you, man, however you got into what you got into, you know what I'm saying? And so, again, it's always been me, even with my kids and us as the brotherhood. You mentioned it, Reed. I've always been down with accountability, man. Ain't never about no animosity. It's accountability, man. You know, God bless me with the insight, the wisdom, the fortitude, you know, to be able to read people, to be able to see situations and cover me and all of us when we was out there bad, out of bounds. You know, to get to this point, to be able to provide this wise counsel or guidance to somebody else and say, hey, bro, I ain't here to make you do nothing or make you go against the grain. But I do know, because of my years of experience, that ain't going to turn out well for you. But do what you do. You know what I'm saying? And so just always having this mindset of, you know, fathers in the household, man, we play a critical role as the development of not just only our natural kids, but you have to be careful about how you move because you don't know who's watching you. I know it's a lot of pressure on my kids at the high school because they friends are all watching me. When I show up, they're like, man, he got a bunch of drip, man, you know, or whether it be my daughter's friends or my son's friends. And so being able to operate in that shadow, which I ain't trying to be overbearing and try to stop them from doing anything, but I also had to limit how much I do get involved. You know what I'm saying? Because I don't want you to feel like you got to compete with me with your friends because I'm here to support you. I ain't trying to step in front of them and be friends with nobody. And I don't talk to none of them. Because I don't want the little girl saying one thing about me to my daughter, and I don't want my son homeboy saying, you know what, they look for me instead of looking for him. You know what I'm saying? So that's a little bit sideways, but, you know, I got kids in high school, and you see all these type of scenarios, because nowadays what you see with the younger boys and the younger girls, there's always this affinity and affection for older people in the older group. It's like I want to go beyond what the high school got. They think they're grown, right?
Grown.
They want to be grown.
Until
man.
it's time to be grown and that invoice come with that rent.
Yeah. They want all that except that.
You said something, B, you know, just going back to the modeling, right? One of the things I did learn by having my dad there is what it does work. Like, you see the results. I can look back now and see myself looking up at him and not really feeling what he was talking about when I was 12 and 13 and 14 and 15. I knew that there was a rub based on how I was feeling at that moment. But he ain't relent. Like, he didn't give up on what he was about, right? He stayed firm. And versus trying to maneuver and be my friend and see what works for me, he was like, no, this is what works. And so now as a grown man, as I go through those moments, I have confidence not only just in my relationship with God and him giving me that instruction, but I've seen it in action. I've seen it with my own eyes. I know my own experience with having a man in front of you that's responsible for you that you got to show reference to as somebody who starts smelling themselves, right? So it's given me a lot more grace on the front end, confidence on the front end, hopefully patience throughout that thing. As our sons grow and navigate this thing, that we don't overreact, but we stick to the plan. We stick to the program. We stick to the discipline and the instruction along with the rewards and the results. So seeing it happen gives you confidence that it will and can happen. So that's been another benefit of actually going through it with a strong man in my household that helped grow us up, man. And now looking back, like, all right, I can do that. That'll work. I ain't gonna hurt them. You know what I'm saying?
And that help. I know, Mike, you talked about the blended families of, you know, a dad taking care of the kids from another woman but not his own. That's something I saw in high school. I mean, my dad had a nephew that lived with him, his wife's nephew, that they raised, that came in with Jordans on. Nike Cortez, the gangster Nikes that I wanted so bad. He had all the stuff.
USA 900 Kings?
Man, now I had upgraded from the USAs and the Pro Wings. I was wearing Reebok, though. I had the Reeboks on.
But you had them J's.
I couldn't get them J's, though. No, Mama ain't never bought $100 shoes. That wouldn't happen. But I saw him come to school looking fresh. Coming from my dad's house. My dad didn't talk to us. Thank God I had such an awesome mom. That's why my mom, I give her the ultimate praise of the way she handled us as men to not let us focus on what we didn't have and what wasn't there. It was all about what we have in front of us and what we can control. And she gave us that love. And the one thing I commend her for still to this day, she never let us disrespect him. She always made sure we respect him. Every birthday, every Father's Day, we had to call or go see him, and we hated it back then. Like, why we got to go talk to him? Because that's your daddy. You ain't going to ever disrespect him, but he's still your dad. So that stuck with me more than what he didn't do for me. The way my mama still made us respect him as authority and as a father, as our father, even though he didn't have anything to do with us. We still had to bow down and say, hey, go speak to him. Go tell him happy birthday when we didn't want to. So
just knowing your mama read, like, that was rooted in this scripture, though. Like, she had to fight off her fleshly thoughts about what the situation is to keep y'all focused on, hey, honor your father and your mother so things can go well with you in life and you live a long life, right? Absolutely. She wasn't doing it just because she felt good about the situation, right? I know, like, that was all
hated him.
Right? That was spiritual.
I done seen her cry so many times behind that.
So that's where it goes back to the discipline of following the word, even if your body or your scenario don't feel like it. Right. She kept y'all in line with that. Like, I respect, I know your mom. Like, that was all word for her, right?
Yeah.
So look at how it does, though, right? She could have pumped all kind of venom into y'all to where y'all hated this man even till now, right? But you ain't walking around with bitterness and hate and resentment. Hey, now that you mature, you see how many different ways life can take people, right? Yeah. It's not only one side to any story. And I'm not saying that disrespectful to nobody, but we got homeboys and brothers that wasn't able to be with their baby mama for whatever reason, right? So it does produce more empathy the more we get out there and exposed to life and see how different scenarios kind of play out. Hey, getting back to the focus of do things as if you're doing it unto God. Don't worry about that. So I respect, man, that was gangster, man. That was big time, bro. That's strong.
Yeah.
So I know the conversation, man. I know we went kind of off script here, man, but I really wanted to take some time for Father's Day, man, for us, because we got 3 real fathers on in the session today. And this is going to reach somebody, maybe it's reach somebody that hasn't had the relationship with their kids that can go, because you always got time. I have a younger brother who doesn't have the best relationship with his daughter. Man, that's in the rearview mirror. What you going to do tomorrow to be there? Be there tomorrow. Because to a kid, they don't care if it was 18 when you came or 8. All they know is my daddy loved me. And that's the biggest thing that I think any kid can see. Mom, too. I'm not discounting moms, but this is about Father's Day. Maybe somebody hear this, and maybe somebody hear this that's been going through what we're talking about that need to say, okay, I'm not the only one feel like this. I went through this. What can I do now to be a better father to my kid? What can I do from a discipline standpoint? Maybe I'm going to stop just screaming at them. Go get your butt in there. Go do this, da-da-da. Because at some point, they tune that out, and that's all they know, and that creates anger. Versus, dang, my dad was dope when they get, as Nigel going through his maturation process, B. Now he asking you, man, how you know that? You didn't have a daddy. How you know how to do that? That's dope and maturity, and I think that speaks volume to the foundation you've set at home, man. That is coming full circle now that he's growing up to be a man. And one day he'll have kids and will follow the same path. So thank you. I appreciate the show today, man. I thought this was dope, man. Shout out to all the fathers for Father's Day. Shout out to all the mamas who going to get gifts. Ask your man what he want, because my boys, I didn't say what I wanted, but they spoke up for me with their birthday cake, and it ain't a cookie. It's a cake.
No cookie cake.
It ain't no little cookie. It's a real cake. Get a man a cake for the day, man. Keep that T-shirt. We don't want no
Father's
T-shirt.
Day, Ken, you can eat cake for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Ain't no rules. You can have it all day long, Ken.
That good cake
food.
too, buddy.
Cake and eat it too, huh?
That's
Yes,
good.
sir. Real raw.
We'll bet that. We appreciate y'all out there. Go out, conversationswithkinfolk.com. Show us some love. Leave some comments. Whatever. To all the fathers out there, happy Father's Day. To all the mothers out there raising young men, happy Father's Day to you too, Mom.
Yeah.
We out of here, y'all. Peace.
So.